If you're looking for a new lens for portrait photography, it could be such a daunting task because there's just so many choices. So in this video, we'll look through different types of lenses and hopefully it will help you to find that particular lens for your portrait photography. I also hope this video will help you to save some money, potentially a lot of money. So if you search the best lens for portrait photography, you'll probably get many answers on the internet. Some people saying pick this one because it's razor sharp, pick that one because it has zero chromatic aberration or zero distortion, or this lens had amazing bokeh. Yes, these are all the factors that define the quality and the functionality of the lens. But for me, none of these factors matters. There's only one thing that truly matters, and that is focal length. Let me explain why. So we're photographers, we take photos. So whenever we choose lens, we always ask us these two questions. Is this lens going to help us to make better art? Is this lens easy to use? Talk about the art. For any photo, the two most important things are composition and lighting. Lens has a little to do with the lighting, but your choice of a lens will have a huge impact on its composition. Easy to use. What I mean by that is you can create many different looks using one single lens. You can use that lens to create wide shot, which shows both the location and your subject without getting too much trouble. You can also use the same lens to get super close up, shoulder up headshot without running into too many issues. So then when you look at these factors like sharpness, chromatic aberration, or bokeh, you can easily tell they got nothing to do with composition and easy to use. The only thing that truly matters are the focal lengths. So now we understand the focal lengths are the only thing that is important. And then let's take a look at a different range of focal lengths. I basically put them into three different categories. I'll say from 85mm and longer, I'll consider them telephoto lens. 24mm and shorter will be considered as a wide angle lens, and between them will be considered a standard lens. Roughly, I'm talking about between 35mm and 50mm. So let's take a look at the telephoto lens first. Telephoto lens is super good for close-up shots, and they're very good for separation. What I mean by that is telephoto lens has a very narrow view angle, so you can easily, if there's anything that's distracting, you can easily use telephoto lens to keep them away from your frame. Telephoto lens also has a very shallow depth of field, so if your background is boring or too busy, you can easily just use a shallow depth of field to melt the background. So what ends up going to happen is your photo going to be very clean. So that's definitely a huge bonus for your portrait because that makes your subject more standout. So this all sounds pretty good, but does telephoto lens has any drawbacks? Of course it does. The first thing is, if you go into a location, for example, you got hired by the client and they rent this beautiful location and they want you to take a photo for them. So it's an indoor place, the space is limited. And then they want to feature the chandelier, the decoration inside, the stairs, it could be anything. So if all you have is telephoto lens, you're gonna run into trouble. Because it's very hard to create wider shots with telephoto lens unless you can move very far away. But since the fact you're shooting indoor, your space could be limited. So you just can't do that. But let's say, okay, you're shooting at the outdoor location, so space is no longer an issue. Is that means that you're not gonna have any problem? That's still not the case. The fact you are very far away from your subject, plus this very narrow angle of view, these two things add together and create an effect. I'll call it a telescope effect. Basically what I mean is, when people look at your photo, they feel like they see your subject through a telescope lens. What ends up gonna happen is, your viewer will constantly aware they're seeing a photo. So on my previous video, when we talk about the composition, I mentioned that the feeling, the mood are very important for your photo. So if your viewer are constantly aware they're looking at your photo, that's definitely not something you want to have. There's another drawback about telephoto lens. Because the fact that you can get decent shot almost anywhere, like even in your backyard, because you can just simply melt the background. So you'll be less aware of what around you. You tend to see things in a small area. So if you're constantly doing this way, one day you have to use a wide angle lens, you're gonna struggle a lot. So what I actually mean is, if you only use telephoto lens, you might improve slower. Okay, let's take a look at the wide-angle lens. Wide-angle lens is great for telling a story. When we tell a story, we need to show who, when, and where. So lots of information need to be packed into the frame. That means we need to include a lot of elements to show this information within the frame. Wide-angle lens is great for that because it has such a wider angle of view. Wide-angle lens is also make it easier for you to shoot in a small space. Wide-angle lens is also good to showing the sense of depth because it makes things close to you looks even closer. It makes things far away from you look even further away. So it will create this POV effect, the point of view effect. So when a viewer look at your photo, it's easier for them to immerse into the scene. So it's easier to create the right mood and feeling using wide-angle lens. But wide-angle lens also has drawback. When you're using wide-angle lens to do closer shot, you're gonna see a lot of distortion. So it's good to use wide-angle lens to make the establishing shot, but when you need a detail shot or close-up shot to show your subject's expression, wide-angle lens is usually not the best choice. Some people use wide-angle lens to do close-up shot to create a special effect, but it's not something I think it can be overused. There's another drawback about wide-angle lens. Because it is capable to include a lot of stuff within the frame. So the stuff that within the frame might or might not what you want. Some of the stuff might be distracting. Some of the stuff might be just simply shouldn't be in the frame, like a garbage can or a sign or something. Many of these stuff, you can't even move them out of the scene. So your only choice will be choose a different angle. So when you're shooting with a wide-angle lens, so your shooting angle might be limited. So that means you will create less variety out of a photo shoot if you only use a wide-angle lens. Okay, so that's about the wide-angle lens. Let's take a look what got left, the standard lens. For me, the standard lens is the best focal lens for portrait photography because it has the benefit of both the wide-angle lens and the telephoto lens. The standard lens, it allows you to make a wider shot and play with your composition easily. They also have enough capability to separate your subject from your background. Standard lens also allow you to do close-up shot without running into too much issue with distortion. So within this standard lenses, basically we're talking about the two most popular focal lenses are 35mm and the 50mm. Which one? That's a tricky question. So that depends on your shooting location. So if you're shooting indoor, you're more likely to use 35mm lens because you're more likely to run in this situation that you have to be closer to your subject. So 35mm lens will be better for that. If you're shooting outdoor, it depends on the location. Shooting at the beach, open space, with a boring sky, let's say you're shooting the beach or desert and then there's no cloud in the sky just like featureless and very boring. You want to exclude sky from your frame, and then 50mm lens is definitely a better choice for you. But if you're shooting the city, there's buildings, there's street signs, there's street lights, all these things. You might want to incorporate into your shot. For that reason, 35mm will be better. So when I do street photography, when I shoot street fashion, I mostly shoot with 35mm. When I shoot at the beach, I mostly shoot with 50mm lens. So now we kind of narrow down to 35mm lens and the 50mm lens, but still there are so many different choices of these two focal length range. So which one shall we buy? Let me give an easy answer. Just get the cheapest one. So for most of the prime lens that you can find on the market right now, I'm talking about the modern prime lens, the aperture range is usually between 1.8 and 1.4. But actually the difference is very minimal. Sometimes you can't even tell the difference. If you choose the 1.8, it will save you a lot of money. At the meantime, the lens will be much lighter. Of course, some of the either 35mm or 50mm, and there's a version of 1.2 or even faster. So it gives you a little bit more capability to separate your subject from the background. But you usually have to pay at least triple amount of the money. At the meantime, the lens can be a lot heavier. Shall you choose that? I'll let you to answer that question. Okay, we almost covered everything. There's one little thing that we haven't talked about yet, which is the character of the lens. I'm talking about how the lens renders the image. For most of the modern lenses, they're pretty much all the same because they're all very sharp. Some of them have a slightly color difference, but that's very easy to deal with in the post-editing. But once you start looking at the vintage lens, things look a lot more different. Very, very interesting. Some of the lenses have a very strong character. and can help to build some very interesting image. But we'll cover that in the future video. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.